Hi folks, Ryan Honeyman here from Lift Economy. Many folks have come to us over the last 10 years and asked, how do I get more involved in creating an economy that works for the benefit of all life? They also ask, what skills and experiences do I need to help make this transition? So 3 years ago, we created something called the Next Economy MBA to help address this and similar questions. Lift Economy's Next Economy MBA is an online course that's designed for entrepreneurs, aspiring entrepreneurs, students, recent graduates, employees, and folks who want to learn more about transformational next economy strategies and businesses. Join the growing alumni network of nearly 250 alumni who've gone through this program and learned essential skills and hopefully built lifelong relationships for catalyzing businesses in the emergent and regenerative economy. So we encourage you to check out our course. You can go to lifteconomy.com/MBA. The next course, Cohort 7, starts on September 21st, 2021. So once again, go to www.lifteconomy.com/MBA. And now, on with the show. Welcome to Next Economy Now. The goal of this podcast series is to highlight the leaders who are taking a regenerative, bioregional, equitable, democratic, racially just, and whole systems approach to creating the new economy. Welcome, Shawn.
Great. Thanks, Ryan. Thanks for having me.
Sure. So what is teal? That's my first question.
Sure. So teal obviously is color, and in this framework, we're using teal to refer to a stage of consciousness. And it comes from integral theory, where we're talking about stages of individual consciousness development. So particularly referring to an individual state. And what Lalou has done is taken that framework and applied it to organizations. So what does it look like collectively as an organization when an organization is at a particular stage of development? And what are some of the characteristics of that stage? And just simply using colors to refer to the stages for simplicity. So teal, the idea of teal is this next stage of human development, this next stage of organizational development, which the good news is actually exists. And there's a good number of people and organizations functioning at this level. And ourselves being an example, we run Lift Economy as a teal organization. And so there's three main characteristics of this teal stage of organizational development, and that's self-management, evolutionary purpose, and wholeness. So organizations functioning at a teal level exhibit these characteristics, where for self-management, the staff is actually, instead of being managed by somebody else, they're actually empowered to self-manage themselves, which means they know how the organization functions, they know the vision of the organization, they know the culture of the organization, and they're empowered to make decisions that are moving the organization towards those goals.
Got it. So if I'm just starting out and sort of, so stages of development, I might hear that say, okay, what does that mean? So maybe what are the sort of stages of development that maybe in relation to organizational development that Lalou and integral theory have talked about in the writing?
Should I go through them all?
I mean, you could do just like a light, what is red? What is amber? Yeah, just kind of so people have a sense of.
So, and what it also does is it gives us a historical perspective to the basically to the development of human society and human culture. So if we're starting with, so red is the first one, we can look kind of farther back into human history and see this simpler structure, and I guess it's also present now, but a red organization is, the analogy is a wolf pack. So and we would see it in present day times as like a street gang, would be an analogy. Or, if we look, farther back into to human history, would be a, small band of people, just barely subsisting, earlier in human history, this kind of thing, where the focus is on, survival, and just getting basic needs met. And much like a wolf pack, there's an alpha, usually an alpha male, that would be, commanding and controlling the group. And so, the culture of that organization is going to be a little more severe than what we are going to be more used to at this day and age. And then amber, the analogy, did I have this right? Is it army? Or that's one of the common, or at least as it exists now, would be the army would be an analogy of an amber organization.
Yeah, kind of like government organizations or the Catholic Church sort of implementing hierarchy. Improvement on red is that there's a hierarchy and processes. Sort of the downside is it's very strict command and control.
Right, and it's a little bit old, a little bit bureaucratic, maybe pretty stagnant. You're not expecting things to move really quickly or get done. Not necessarily very humane. You have things like veterans without benefits for a long time, and the structure doesn't actually seem to be addressing those basic concerns. And then a little more contemporary, what we're maybe most familiar with at this moment is orange. And so that's the common example of orange would be the multinational corporation structure that we have in place today, where you do have a pretty structured hierarchy. The analogy would be the organization as a machine. And you have this command and control paradigm where the CEO or the upper management theoretically has all the intelligence and experience, and they're the ones qualified for making all the decisions or the important decisions for the organization. And then those decisions come down from on high, and other people are required to implement them, whether they agree to them or not. And so I think as we all have experience that has a lot of negative impacts as well. People not feeling really inspired or connected in their job. Also has the side effect of people doing things that don't care for other people or care for the environment. So a CEO or a board of directors can say, hey, we need to maximize profit on this. We don't care about the pollution or the extraction of resources or the exploitation of the labor. We want this result, and other people are required to carry it out. Whereas if they were in a more equal relationship with those people, they wouldn't be imposing those type of effects on them. So
right. So I guess like some improvement over amber would just be individual performance is rewarded, whereas maybe in the government or something, your kind of individual performance is not rewarded. So sort of the improvement to orange would be that you can be a high performer, but there's sort of a total individualistic, like I'm about me, ego based. So that's kind of I guess the shadow of orange.
Right. Yeah, and it's incentivized. I'm incentivized to get my promotion, get my bonus, and maybe edge you out of a promotion rather than really working together collectively. And so again, we maybe know that one the best in terms of kind of the dominant mainstream paradigm of commercial business as usual. And then what's newer, becoming more common, would be green, would be the next stage. And this is the analogy of the organization as a family. So it's a little bit more caring. There's more focus on culture and enjoying the work experience, being more affiliative or collaborative with people. But in most cases, there still exists also a hierarchy. So we can think of some companies like Ben & Jerry's or Southwest Airlines, where they're considered great places to work, but you're still just an employee. And while you might be spoken to and they might consider, your opinions or concerns, you're still going to be handed down a decision to implement. So it's maybe a step forward in terms of being more collective and embracing people. But some of the shadow sides of this is be similar to the dysfunctions of a family, where what the father says is right, and you have to do it anyways. This type of thing. We also see green in co-ops. Worker co-ops is a model we're very fond of, Lift Economy. And we see some of the co-ops being maybe a little bit too green, in the sense that they have everybody sitting in on a board meeting and involved in decisions that could be delegated and handled more efficiently. But because they have this kind of strong collective kind of family feeling, they feel it's more important to involve everybody in decisions, on principle, and it's almost as a reaction to the previous stage of orange. So teal would be the next stage after green. But as I mentioned, we're going more towards self-management rather than like a group management. And so that's where you get this kind of delegated authority and responsibility. So for example, in a teal organization, anybody can make a decision for any amount of money affecting the organization, provided they follow an advice-seeking process where they get advice from everybody who's affected by the decision or has expertise or skills pertaining to the decision. So what you get from that is a really engaged and empowered workforce, where people are really considerate of the whole team and their impacts on the team, but they're also encouraged and empowered to take a step forward as a leader. And if they see an insight and innovation that they could benefit the organization, and they take counsel with the right people, then they're also empowered to move that forward. So it really, you can see, we're discussing these kind of evolutionary stages for individual and collective organization. We can see when we get into teal organizations, it becomes a very powerful structure for evolving to meet everybody's needs, because you're actually, right. I mentioned wholeness is one of the characteristics. You actually have a sense of wholeness, not just to the organization, but all of the spheres of influence of the organization. So it's much more thoughtful.
Right. And, for me, and I think for you and other folks, the book Reinventing Organizations by Frederick Laloux was interesting and sort of, evolved our consciousness about what's possible, particularly because teal can sound very ephemeral and future utopia sounding, where everyone is autonomous and works like a living organism, and we can all like remove our masks and show up to work, and then we listen to the purpose of the organization. But it seems like the insight is that this is already existing, and Laloux profiled, I think it was 12 companies. So what stood out for you? Like what was interesting about that realization that this is actually happening?
Yeah. So again, just really affirming and exciting that, and part of what he does in the book, as you're saying, is the case studies. It's looking at 12 organizations that they don't know each other. They didn't go to the same business school. They didn't hire the same consultants to set up their organization. Basically, the concept is that they're all exhibiting similar patterns of this self-management, wholeness, evolutionary purpose is showing up independently in these organizations. So the theory is that this is actually consciousness evolving through us spontaneously, and exhibiting a coherent pattern here. So it's literally the next stage of consciousness that's emerging through these organizational structures. So that's, again, it's exciting, it's affirming, and for for ourselves at Lyft, and myself personally, I've been running companies this way since the 90s. I started my woodworking cooperative in San Francisco in the late 90s, and exactly as a worker-owned cooperative. And honestly, we were a little more green than Teal, and the books helped me see that. But we definitely had strong Teal elements to the organization, just naturally as young progressive people saying, well, if we set up a company, how do we want it to be? Well, we don't. And we didn't have these nice classifications of orange and green and whatever, but we knew we didn't want to be just like that. We knew there's a better way to do. And so it's affirming to see this exhibiting globally and on some larger companies. Some of the companies in the book are 40,000 people, global employees, run entirely by small self-managed teams of 10 to 15 people. So it's again, very, very encouraging and inspiring that this is, it's a real thing that's happening. And it's not just, oh, there's a couple people doing it, way out on the fringe, and we're not sure if it works. The results are really profound. One of my favorites is the Bertzorg neighborhood nursing organization for the Netherlands, where the organization is just like 8 years old or something. And in the course of 8 years, they've completely transformed the entire industry to the extent that I think they have, something like 90% of all of the neighborhood nurses in the Netherlands are now working for this organization and providing much better care at a much lower cost with much better results. So this is like really embodies the Buckminster Fuller's recommendation of don't fight against the old paradigm, just design a new system that makes the old one obsolete. And so the idea is that this meets everybody's needs much more abundantly at much lower cost. It's just win-win-win for everybody.
Very interesting, yeah.
So the opportunity here is
that Fuller quote.
Yeah. So the opportunity here is how do we, catalyze this evolution of consciousness within organizations to extend this experience to more people, because it's actually contagious. And one of the theories in the book is like, well, how much does one individual's level of growth and development limit the collective? And what we see through the book, and also again Lyft functioning this way, and a lot of our companies having elements of this, we see that when people come into an environment of a company with a vision and a culture that's set on this level, people pick it up right away. It's actually quite natural for people to function this way, and like I'm saying, people pick it up right away, and they really like it. It becomes part of them. And if they go on to another job or another role, they're going to be bringing aspects of this with them because it just works better.
Great. And so, in the last 4 or 5 minutes, so if someone's listening and they're maybe interested in doing some Teal practices, maybe not going all in today, but, want to start learning more, what are some kind of easy or, some tips you could provide to someone to kind of get them started on that Teal journey?
Well, there's, remarkably enough, there's actually somewhat of a movement around this. So depending where you are, there's meetups, there's groups. I'm hosting a group in New York City. We know there's a group in the Bay Area. You're hosting a group online. So there's, people self-organizing to, as communities of practice, to share best practices. There's a online forum where it's international forum for people practicing this. There's a lot of ideas exchanged there. There's a wiki that is being built of people sharing documents and policies and procedures for organizations.
What are some of the websites that you just mentioned? I think it's like, if you go to reinventingorganizations.com, I think there's a community forum and that you can access the wiki.
Yeah, I think the links are through Reinventing Organizations, and one's called Discourse for the discussions, but the other one's called Wiki. Meetup.com, you can search for Teal. I've seen, our group is posted on there. I've seen some of the other groups posted on there. So that's a good way to do it. You can read the book and just start practicing in your own life. That's a common question that comes up as we hear from people that are at organizations that are not necessarily Teal organizations, and they say, well, how do we transition, and what can I do at my job to do this? And there are some limits. For example, if you're at a traditional orange organization, there's only so far you can go without some of the higher ups really putting some weight behind this and actually changing some of the fundamental structures. But there's a lot that you can do just in your own activity. And in the way you interact with other people. So you can just start bringing some of these principles and practices into how you communicate, how you perform, how you work with other people. So you can, basically it's the way I see it, it's a way of life. And so you can just start behaving this way. And eventually, if it's not a fit at your organization, you may need to relocate. Or start a new organization, or get hired at an organization that's already functioning this way. Although there are examples of organizations transforming, or even teams within an organization that create within their working group some of these shared practices. So it's emergence. It's exciting. There's not just necessarily a one formula. But again, the concepts and the principles are accessible and somewhat universal, so they can be, like I'm saying, just brought into your own awareness and consciousness, and the habits and behaviors that which you're engaging in your day. Yeah.
So maybe just a few resources would be, the book Reinventing Organizations by Frederick Laloux. That's Laloux. There's also another good book on self-management and the advice process, which Shawn mentioned. It's called The Decision Maker by Dennis Bakke, Bakke. And at Lift Economy, we're going to be starting a session, a webinar series for people interested in learning about Teal, sort of this evolutionary, the evolution of consciousness. So stay tuned, lifteconomy.com, and we'll have information up there soon. But awesome, Shawn, thanks for joining. And we might have to go into a little more detail on Teal because there's so much content here, but maybe until next time.
Absolutely. Great. Cool. Thanks, Ryan.
All right. Thanks, Shawn. Talk soon.
Next Economy Now is a production of Lift Economy. To listen to all of our episodes, go to lifteconomy.com/podcast. That's LIFT economy.com/podcast. You can also sign up for our monthly newsletter at lifteconomy.com/newsletter. Please also rate and review our podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening.